a tale of two pies. So this is a Quiche Lorraine and an apple tart. Now you can have these at any time of the year, but I also thought these would be great to think of as an appetizer, because either of these you could cut up in small pieces and it would be nice as your guests arrive, having like a little cocktail hour, or serve the whole thing as part of your holiday meal. Is it a good shortcut to buy a store-bought crust, or should you just make it yourself? Well, you'll see what I figured out. So for the quiche, we got eggs, cream, ham, chives, pre-made pastry shell, and my favorite, Gruyère cheese. For the apple tart, just 4 apples will do, almost 3 actually. Some spices, some turbinado sugar, and some little apricot glaze coming at the end. Now, I often don't make apple pies because I think, oof, I hate coring them, but it actually wasn't that big of a deal, and I don't need that many. So first I gotta peel them, and then I gotta core. And then I slice them with a mandolin, because I want a really nice thin slice for the idea of the tart that I have in mind. The other thing that's really important to do when you have an apple pie, make an apple pie, is you want to drain a lot of the fluid from the apple. So I do about a 1/4 cup of sugar here and some lemon juice and stir it up, and then I want to get rid of some of the liquid of the apples. This is particularly important if you're going to put a crust on, which I'm not doing this time. Speaking of crust, here's that store-bought crust I got from Trader Joe's, and yeah, it didn't really roll out the way I wanted. So I'm in this far, so let me just try to process it. So I put it in the food processor to see if I can reconstitute it. The idea of thinking that, I'll just roll it out, which actually, it did work. It did. And it was a little less messy than a homemade crust, but not that much less messy. This is when I'm going to remind you, don't be afraid to cook, don't be afraid to bake. Would I win the British bake-off here? No, probably not. But you know what? It's going to look fine when I serve it, because of all this little Franken crust here, it's going to come together and there's going to be apples over it. It's actually going to be delicious. Highly recommend getting these pre-cut parchment papers, and then these are my baking beads. So we're going to blind bake this for about 10 to 12 minutes in an oven 350. And now it's only been 30 minutes since I've been draining the apples, but look what I have already. Look at that. Maybe I should have drinking that like some apple juice. God, I didn't think of that before. Waste not, want not. And I'll massage these a little bit. Now I'm going to roll out my second dough, which again is another one of these pre-made ones. There's the apple tart one, just ready to get out of the oven. And I'm transferring my baking beads now in the crust that I'm putting together for the quiche, which is a deeper dish. Because in this case, I really want this quiche to be something that my son can have for breakfast, and my boyfriend can have for dinner with a salad when he comes home. And as I said, you could also cut it up in smaller pieces, and it could be an appetizer. So we've got 4 eggs, a cup of cream, paprika, nutmeg, and here is my fave, Gruyère. If my family had a motto or a flag, it would just be Gruyère cheese. We make my late husband's great grilled cheese out of the Gruyère, and it is just a wonderful aged cheese with a lot of taste. So I got about 4 ounces of Gruyère there. I've done it with as little as 3 ounces, but if you got the 4 ounces, go for it. You don't even need a whisk, just mixing this all together with a fork. Then I have a ham that I've diced up, putting some in there. You could also make this with bacon. I was more in the mood for ham. It just seemed more autumnal to me. And then I got some chives, which unfortunately is the only herb I don't presently have growing in my garden, so I did have to buy these. But gosh, I love these chives. Probably diced up about a tablespoon, but you could almost add more, really. I mean, I almost feel like you cannot add enough chives to this. I just love the taste of the fresh chives. And they're another classic Daphne funky crust. So the crust has been blind baked. We're going to put the custard in, and it's ready for the oven. Meanwhile, back with the apples, let's see, after an hour and a half, more of the fluid there. Oh, it's raining. apple water. Now we're going to add 4 ounces of melted butter, some vanilla, and I went with the classic spices: nutmeg, allspice, cinnamon. I tip my hat if you want to use some more alternative spices, but I just thought I'd go classic. Mix it all together. And now I did 1 layer of all these things. So I covered it with 1 layer of the apples, and then I had enough, went over and did a second layer. Because I wanted something kind of crispy. And I got this idea from a blogger I like named Once Upon a Chef, who I had a pleasure to interview for at an event a few years ago, which was she used an apricot glaze on an apple pie she did. And so I got out some of my apricot jam, added a little hot water to it, and then I reduced it. So just like another way to have a different layer of sweetness. But overall, this was not an overly sweet tart, which I don't like things that are too sweet. Just spooned it on there. And then with a little turbinado sugar that added will give it a little brown color as it cooks. There we go. There's the turbinado. And now I have a finished quiche and a finished apple tart. But of course, the true test is in the taste. And there you have a tale of 2 pies. Now, I took 1 bite of this quiche. I thought it was so fluffy and delicious. I had a second one, and then my son came home. So you like the quiche, and
it's good. It's like really crisp.
Ooh. The quiche was so popular, I did decide to make a second one, and I made my own crust. And let me tell you, it was just as easy as a store-bought. So I'd say just do your own crust. And because I made a second one, there was some dinner, and it could also be a nice breakfast, as planned.